We spent the entire first semester on the indicative, and then quickly got into the participles. Then last time we had the subjunctive. In this lesson we're going to learn something about the infinitives, present and aorist infinitives. A little good news for you. There are only 6 forms that we're going to be learning, as opposed to all the hundreds of forms almost that we had in the indicative. So just a few forms, but we do have a little bit more discussion on how we use the infinitive. So first of all, let's look at the vocabulary, page 136 of Machen, and it goes like this. The, it's a personal verb used only in the third person. It is necessary. The, it is necessary. Existi, impersonal verb, only used in the third person again. It is lawful. Existi, it is lawful. Fellow, I wish. Isus, Isu, O, Jesus. Itheos, O, a Jew. Kelevo, I command. Komi, a village. Mello, I am about, or I am going to do something. Ophilo, I owe or ought. Now we've had this word owe or ought twice now. The, it is necessary, or you ought to, would be another way of saying it. It is necessary. And then ophili, I owe or I ought. And we still haven't gotten the word that we used in the song the other day. Remember that word for owe or ought? Everybody ought to know. Prepi, a different word. Now those 3 words, the and ophilo and prepi, are all used in the 2nd chapter of the book of Hebrews. It is necessary. Well, this one, ophilo, I owe or I ought. Pasco, I suffer. You've heard of the paschal meal and so forth from this form. Pasco, I suffer. Pro, with the genitive before. Soteria, salvation. Phariseos, O, a Pharisee. And Christos, O, Christ, or the Messiah. That's the vocabulary. Now, the forms are in paragraph 293, right below the vocabulary. And you see them. Li'in, to loose. Lieste, to loose for oneself. And lieste, again, to be loosed. As you would expect, in the present tense, the middle and passive are the same form. Then the aorist, lise, to loose, lisaste, to loose for oneself, and lithine, to be loosed. Now, as I said, these don't decline, they don't never change, that's it. We have one more form, that's in 297, and that's the present infinitive of imi, which is ine. Now, the ine is used in modern Greek for he is and they are. They use it all the time. Ti ora ine, what hour is it? That kind of thing. So the ine then is, in our form, is going to be simply an infinitive, but if you're getting into some modern speaking at all, you've already discovered it in the regular to be verb. Now, what do you know about an infinitive? Not much, that's what I thought. All right, the infinitive is used in English. All we do is stick a to in front of the verb. To, swim, to, go, whatever. And you see in your workbook, we're not going to it, but you look at your workbook, I wish to go. To go is simply a complement of the verb wish. I wish to go. It completes the verb. We use that way in English. To swim is fun. That's using it as a subject. To swim is fun. As an object, he said to go. Object of a verb. So we use them that way. The only other different way that we use it in Greek is as object of a preposition. And I can't think of any way that English uses that. So let's look at the flip chart and get an overview of the uses of the infinitive in the New Testament. And if you follow, you'll see that this is paragraph 298. I wish to hear the word. Now, you see it's a part of the verb. I wish to hear. Now, it isn't I wish what to hear something. That isn't it. It's a part of the verb. I wish to hear. And then the object of this verb is logon. Whenever you have a complementary infinitive, assume that this is the whole verb. If there's something that modifies the word here, then it still goes under here because both of these are the verb. So, and the object then is the object of both, not just the object of akouin. So that's the first way, complementary. Now there are only 3 or 4 words which take the complementary infinitive. Thelo, ophilo, Thello, mello is another, and autochrome. Those begin, ought, and thello, wish. We have those in the workbook, all listed for you. That's one way to use an infinitive as complementary infinitive. Another way is to use it as a subject with third-person verbs. The verb thee, existi, and estin. This word here, estin. Estin, thee, existi, will take the infinitive as a subject. To die on behalf of the brothers is good. Now we would translate that in a good English, it is good to die on behalf of the brothers. But actually, the subject is the infinitive. To die on behalf of the brothers is good. Thee, existi, estin. The third use is the preposition, or the infinitive used as object of a preposition. The Lord went away in the them to say these things, literally. In the them to say these things. Now, this infinitive is the object of n. And when n is used with an infinitive, we translate it while. You can see that. If we say in the doing something, it would be while. And then the subject of the infinitive is in the accusative case. Actually, it's called the subject. It's really the accusative of... It's an accusative of general reference. But the while, then, you say while they were saying these things. In the them to say these things, or while they were saying these things. And the were saying, it's were saying instead of are saying because your main verb is past. And we're treating this just like we would a participle. While they were saying, it's looking at it as the same time as the main verb. While they were saying these things. So while. Now other participles are used, like meta after, the because, and is used as purpose, the same as ina. So meta, the is, and en are used with infinitives, and when they're so used, then they will take the infinitive as their object. So it can be used as complementary, can be used as subject of certain verbs, can be used of objects of certain prepositions. It can also be used as the object of a verb of saying. The men were saying, what were they saying? That's discourse, see? Telling what they were saying. They were saying, him to be the prophet. Or, if we put that into indirect discourse, it would be, they were saying that he was the prophet. Again, we say were because of the past time main verb. The men were saying that he was the prophet. Now we're going to talk about the indirect discourse in just a moment, but that's an overview of the way infinitives are used in the New Testament. We'll go back now and look at some of the details that he gives us in these paragraphs. Now, on page 137, you see his definition. The infinitive is a verbal noun, paragraph 298. The infinitive is a verbal noun. In many cases, the use of the Greek infinitive is so much like that of the infinitive in English as to call for no comment. That was true in Machen's day. If it was English, people knew it. Not so much in our day. Thus, he says, Thello akouin ton logon means, I wish to hear the word. Here, the English is a literal translation of the Greek. Verbs of wishing, beginning, and about, or ought, are verbs that take the complementary infinitive. Paragraph 298, the first illustration that we gave just a moment ago. We also have that on the workbook. You see in the workbook, page 43, Thello, philo, mello, or archime. All of those take the complementary infinitive diagrammed in that way. Then you see in paragraph 299 he says, there is ordinarily no distinction of time between the tenses in the infinitive. That's what we'd expect. Outside of the indicative, no time. The present infinitive simply refers to continuous action or continuous or repeated action, while the aorist refers to the action in no such way. It simply says it happened. Aorist is the happening, present is the continuation. So we're not looking for time of action in the infinitive, we're looking for kind of action. Aktien Sart. You happen to be a little bit of German. The articular infinitive, paragraph 301, the Greek infinitive, being a verbal noun, can have the article like any other noun, and is treated like an indeclinable neuter noun, and so has the neuter article. So whenever it has the article, it'll have the neuter article, and will have uses of a noun. Now in paragraph 302, he's talking about how the infinitive can stand as a subject. Thus, he says, kalon esti to apathanin iperton adaphon, means, and don't bother with that, the act or behalf and all that business. The literal translation, or less literally, it is good to die on behalf of the brethren. That would be a smooth English translation. But then he says something very interesting. He says, here, the to apothanin, that is the infinitive, is in the nominative case being the subject of the verb estin. And that's what I've pointed out to you, that in the verbs like estin, the, existi, will have the infinitive as a subject. And you'll see that in the workbook, again, on page 44. Paragraph 302, diagrammed in this manner. Paragraph 302, with verbs like estin, the, and existi. Then we have paragraph 303 and 304, which talk about the infinitive being used after prepositions. Now the prepositions that he uses here are meta, dia, is, pro, and in. Now I think his illustrations will help us. The only thing we need to learn from the paragraphs, I think, is simply paragraph 304. He says, so far the infinitive has been viewed as a noun, but is also part of a verb. And so, as a part of a verb, it can have, not only as the participle can have adverbial modifiers and a direct object, we saw that with the participle, but also, unlike the participle, can have a subject. The subject of the infinitive is in the accusative case. And so, when we have it used especially with the object of a preposition or the object of a saying verb, it may have the subject. If it does, it will be in the accusative case. Now, look what he gives us. He gives en to leyin, paragraph 304, first example, aftus tafta. While they were saying these things, say, while the en, and then they, aftus, subject of leyin, and then we were saying while they were saying these things. The were, because he's assuming a past time main verb, though it isn't there. With number 2, meta, and he translates meta after, and literally it's after the crowd to be dismissed. See the tone aklon there? That's the accusative, and it's going to be the subject of the apalithine, the infinitive. So after the crowd had been dismissed, again, we're using, he has a past time main verb, apilthin, therefore we're saying had been with an aorist infinitive. Remember that chart we had back on, I think, page 39 of the workbook? That will tell you about helping verbs in temporal clauses. Then in paragraph, or in the third example, the he says, because this was being said by the crowds. This to be said, tuto. And then, so this being said by the crowds, the apostle went away. Again, acting as object. Then in number 4, something a little different. Tapta the ipon imin isto mi yeniste imas. Lulus tis imartias. Thought I was finished there. There he's using is to with the infinitive. Now, is to with the infinitive is one way to express purpose. And we'll handle this exactly like we would the ina. In order that. So we'll translate the is in order that, and after that, it's the same way as we've done with the other infinitives, or the other prepositions. So in order that you might not become servants of sin. So 2 ways now to express purpose. Ina, and then is to with the infinitive. Now, indirect discourse. These are diagrammed, by the way, in the workbook. We won't go to the workbook for that. But for indirect discourse, we might. Paragraph 306, indirect discourse is sometimes expressed by the accusative and the infinitive. The men were saying that he was the prophet, or they were saying, literally, him to be a prophet. Normally, when we translate that, paragraph 307 says, we would use OT with the indicative. That's a usual indirect discourse. And in English, indirect discourse would be that. He said that. That's indirect. If we say he said, put quotation marks around it, that's direct. He said, I am going. But if I want to report that, I would say he said that he was going. So when we talk about indirect discourse, we're not giving the exact words, we're giving the gist of what he said. We're keeping it within bounds, but not giving the direct words that he said. Now, we have a little problem, not with the Greek. Greek's easy. The problem is with the English. And if you don't know the English, then we may have to work on that a bit. Indirect discourse. In Greek, no matter whether it's direct or indirect, the discourse will have the same tense as the man used when he said it. For instance, look at number 140. You see, lei oti vlepi ton apostolon. The vlepi is a present tense, and that's indirect discourse. He says that he sees the apostle. Now, once you go to indirect discourse, you still retain the present tense. Look at number 2. He said that he sees the apostle. Still keep the present tense, vlepi there. The Greek retains the same tense. However, English is not like that. English retains the same tense if the main verb is present. Direct. This is all English now. Forget the Greek. Don't forget the Greek, but we're not talking about Greek right now. I see the man. The direct discourse says, I see the man. That's what he said, actually. Now, indirect discourse, he says, when you have a present tense main verb, he says that he sees. We retain the same tense that we had in the direct. If you have your main verb is present. If we don't have a present time main verb, then it will go back one step. For instance, if you had see, it would go back to saw. Your main verb is past, it goes back one step from see to saw, or if he had said saw, then it would be back to had seen. Here's the illustration. Our direct discourse is, I see the man. The indirect is, he said, past time main verb, that he saw. See? We're going back from see to saw. From see, here, to saw. He said that he saw. And the reason we go back one step is because the main verb is past. Only when the main verb is past in English do we go back one step to saw. Now notice, when you already have saw, he said, I saw the man. Direct, I saw the man. Indirect, he says that, and that's the key to the indirect, he says that he saw the man. Now you retain that because your main verb is present. Now indirect, he said, once your main verb is past, then you have to go back one step from saw to had seen. Saw, had seen. So he said that he had seen the man. Easy? All right, one more illustration. If you have a present tense in the discourse, I shall see the man. The direct then is, I shall see the man. The indirect with a present time main verb would keep the same tense. He says that he shall see the man. The indirect with a past time main verb, then the shall goes back to would. He said that he would see the man. Now, that shouldn't be any problem to you. The only thing we're going to change is if we have a past time main verb, then we will go back one step from the tense of the discourse verb back one step to either see, saw from see, or had seen from saw. Okay, that's the indirect discourse. As again I say that's English. And all those illustrations I found on page 140 in Machen. I used his very words And I hope that you will follow along on those. And you'll look in the next part of your workbook, you'll see those diagrammed. And that should help you some on that. Paragraph 309 looks at the proper name. Proper names are often spelled with the capital letters, and Jesus is one of those. And it's just you'll need to learn some of the capitals. There are only about 6 or 8 words, capital letters, that are different from the lowercase. So you might do well to go back and look at those. Remember, when you do your exercises, divide and conquer. Get your main verb first. Put that on the line. Get the subject. Do whatever you can, and then get the other clauses or verbals. If you have a participle, if you have an infinitive, find out where it goes. And with infinitives especially, look for the verb that goes with it, or look for what's going with it. Like if there's a preposition, then look for the infinitive to be the object. If there's a thello, mello, or one of those, look for it to be a complement. If you have thee or estin or existi, then expect it will be the subject. So look at those clues. Keep that up in front of you as you do your exercises. First 10 or whatever you've been assigned. And next time we get into contract verbs, and we're going to introduce the Greek New Testament. We'll be doing some diagramming in 1 John. And we hope to get 2 chapters of 1 John, or about into the 2nd chapter of 1 John before we finish this time. And we'll give you the tools by which you can go ahead and diagram the whole of 1 John. And that's something that a lot of people who've had a lot of Greek aren't able to do. So get yourself a Greek New Testament. Get a UBS text. It's a maroon text. If you have a bookstore near you, they should have it. UBS. United Bible Society text, and we'll be using that text on the program next.